The Undergang Armchair.
Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Undergang Armchair Podcast. My name is Ondo. We're on episode 6, Blow. We're a little overwhelmed, we're a little frustrated. Things are going better, things are going worse. I don't know. We're trying to keep it alive here. We've been particularly frustrated. I should say I've been particularly frustrated with with my presence on the mic here when I'm talking straight to you guys. I think it's a little strange. I'm sitting in an empty room talking to nobody, and that makes me a little nervous, and you can hear it in my voice, and I'm not as quick or as interesting or any of that. So I'm really working on becoming comfortable here, because I want to talk to you guys like you're here and like a real person. The microphone does strange things. I'm definitely getting better, I think, at when I'm talking and interviewing somebody, at sounding natural and ignoring the mic. But it's here in this empty room when I'm rapping at you guys, that shit gets a little weird. But we're doing it. We're getting there. We're also pretty excited because we just changed recording software, and hopefully that should be a pretty good step up. We're hoping that the sound quality improves. We are always striving to be professionale. We want to deliver a product that sounds good to you guys. We want to deliver something that is consistent, that is not a pain in the arse to listen to, and doesn't sound slapdash. This is supposed to be top level stuff, and we know we're learning by doing and blah blah blah. But we have high goals set. That's the plan. So on that note, check out this new interview. We have Thomas Øvlisen. I cannot say that properly. I'm sorry, Thomas. Øvlisen. It's got one of those Danish letters in it, the Ø. Anyways, we've got Thomas with us today. We got quick turnaround here at the podcast. We had an interview with him today because today being Tuesday, the 26th of November, he has an opening on Friday, the 29th of November. At V1 Gallery here in Copenhagen, 2013, Vesterbro. I must say that we recorded this interview at the gallery, so there's some people in the background. Right, after I tell you that the sound is better, then I have to tell you that it's worse. No, it's a gallery. There's a few people talking in the background. There's some people banging on the roof at some point. We tried to minimize it. It's really not that bad, we hope, but just so you know, that's what's going on. So we thought we'd grab him before the show opens, and then hopefully you guys can hear the interview, and then go down, and you can hug one of his sculptures. Apparently you can do that. Or paintings, depending on how you want to talk about it. So anyways, we have a good chat with Thomas. He's an interesting man. He obviously has thought about a lot of stuff, because he's got a lot of stuff to say and weigh in on. And we really are happy that he sat down with us. It's, of course, a very interesting time in an artist's life when you've been working on something for months, maybe years, and then one day you have to take it out of your workspace and hang it on a wall, and at that point it is out of your hands. You cannot do anything about it anymore. That's it. It's out there. It's in the world. And then, usually that happens a few days before the general public comes and the beer starts pouring and all that. And sometimes you've got empty nest syndrome. Sometimes you do not know what to do with yourself. And we talk about it a little bit in the interview. But it's a really interesting thing. I mean, imagine working on something for a year and then one morning putting it all out of your hands and out into the world. So that's where Thomas was today. Seems like a very calm man. Was not worried about it, but that means now the job lies on you, dear listener. You got to go down to V1 Gallery and see his show on Friday. Now it's time to make this public and to celebrate the completion of yet another project. So once again, V1 Gallery, November 29th. Grazing Blitz, he calls the show. Peep it. Enjoy the interview with Thomas. But yeah, that thing with the pagers is wild.
Yeah. They can't all be drug dealers.
No, kids, teenagers had them.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. It must have gotten cool from somewhere. I don't know.
I think it was that thing like I think it started typical way that American things do is that the parents were worried about the teenagers.
Yeah.
I can't get a hold of my teenager.
Yeah.
So then, if we buy them a pager, then they have to, respond. But then people started working out pager code. You could write in numbers.
Yeah.
And then if you turn it upside down, like a 4 becomes an H.
Yeah.
And, 0 obviously is an O, 1 is L. So you can write hello with a 3 becomes backwards. And people could write really pretty descriptive things with a very limited vocabulary.
Yeah, we did it on calculators that you could write. Like lesbian and homo and stuff like that.
Totally. And that was... I missed that. I didn't have a pager because they were enormously expensive, which is funny.
That's what I thought when I moved to Providence in 97.
Did you go to RISD?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. How was that?
It was great. It was fantastic.
In 97?
Yeah.
Okay. And how long were you in the States for?
I then graduated in 2001. I moved to New York, and I moved back in 2002. So like 5.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it was great.
I mean, art school in America is a very specific thing. I went to the school, the Art Institute of Chicago, from 2000 till 2003, and I heard a lot about RISD.
Yeah,
it was one of those places when I was upset about the school I was going to. I was like, "Yeah, I should go to RISD. Fuck this,"
Yeah, it's the same thing at RISD.
Totally.
Yeah. It was like that, but it's like opposite schools, right? RISD is pretty structured,
right?
As I understand it,
right?
And the Art Institute is you can pick whatever class you want.
It was really free. We could do almost anything we wanted,
yeah.
Which meant I got to try lots of cool things, but it also meant when I left, I had no focus.
Yeah,
at all.
And that's the opposite. At RISD, they focus you. Like you get to do different things, but it's structured. You have to study some social sciences. You have to study art history. You have to study these things, and then you can do different studio courses in other majors, but only one.
Right. So try painting if you're a photography student.
Exactly, and then they have a trimester, so they have like a break in the middle, which is like a one class semester in 1 month or 6 weeks, or a short semester.
So you can try things out.
Exactly.
The summer courses too, and stuff like that.
But that's not summer courses aren't part. That's like I think only for high school, like senior high school students.
Okay,
I think they probably. I mean, they have tons of classes.
Right.
They also offer what's it called? You don't get a diploma.
Like, right. Non-degree courses.
Exactly. There's tons of people everywhere.
Right. But how did you end up going there? I mean, did you go to the Art Institute here first?
No, I was more the practical kind of way. I was working as a photographer's assistant. Then I worked in advertising as art director or art director assistant, and then I became art director. And I don't know, I didn't like it, and I got in a huge fight with my boss and ended up back in my parents' house. And they had a friend visiting from the States, and he was like, "Hey, you should try to apply to RISD. It's a great school." And I was like, "Okay." And I had already, from a job as a graphic design assistant, or I guess junior graphic designer, I've been introduced to the art school art center in
In
Pasadena,
yeah.
which back then had a department in Switzerland that I went to visit with that job, and they actually like encouraged me to apply. And when I applied, they closed the thing in Switzerland.
You broke their school in Switzerland.
Yeah. And my application stranded. You know, I met a friend that studied down there, and I was like, "Hey, I'm coming to hang out. I'm coming down after the summer." And he's like, "Really?" Because the school closed. I'm like, "What?"
No one told you.
No one told me. So I don't know. It must have it must have hit them like right after I don't know. It was weird. So anyway, I ended up at RISD, and I was like, I don't know. It was awesome. It took me a little while.
It's a whole different way of going to school.
Totally different way. I thought I aced my first art history test, and I got an F. I failed it completely.
Right. You're like, I got this.
Yeah, I was like, this is kind of like this, you know, because Danish school is all about interpretation. It's all about your understanding of it, showing that you know what's going on, and then that you know how it applies to what you and like what's going on right now.
Totally.
And over there, basic art history 101, it's just dates and names.
Yeah.
Please.
Right.
Nothing more.
Tell me what I just told you again.
Yeah. You need to know this.
Yeah.
And I have to say I got converted because I don't know, the school was packed with amazing students, right? Mm-hmm. And students who actually remembered their Homer and Odyssey and you know, and when you sit later on, I minored, or I have a concentration in art history, and later on when you're sitting in these grad school classes where you're like 8 students and you're discussing, right? And if you you're in a discussion and you don't know your dates, you're out. Right. You know, you're like your opinion doesn't even count.
No, they're really serious. It's
and like one of my best friends, she went to Miss Porter's in you know at school.
No,
it's a all girls boarding school in Connecticut.
Miss Porter's,
and yeah, and like the tagline or whatever is that they come as girls and leave as women. Mm-hmm. And it's like super strict boarding school, but she is super smart. She's, I don't know, PhD crap in New York right now. Mm-hmm. Super cool girl, Adriana Campbell. But you know, she just, I don't know, all these kids. You know, you come to one of the best schools in the States to have the best students, right? And it's just, it's not that it's like a race or something like that. It's like,
well, it kind of is in a way. Also.
Yeah, but I don't know. I didn't have that feeling. People were really into helping each other, and the school is super into helping you, right? And for the first time for me, it was amazing because for me the Danish model just made me scrape by. Like, hey, because over here you don't, you know, if you fuck up, whatever, you just end up in welfare. Like you just end up being okay, you know. But but more or less, right? If in New York or LA, like if you walk on the street with your kids, you know, like you jump over like dying poor people, and the kids are like, shit, I'm not gonna end up there, right? And so if you decide to become an artist or an art historian or any like fringe job, you work your ass off because chances are you're not gonna get a job, right? You're not gonna make any money.
Right, you can't be mediocre.
Yeah, you have to fucking be the best.
I have a lot of debate about this in my head because now I've lived both places, right?
Yeah.
And so I really don't like the fact, you know, I come from north of San Francisco. San Francisco has more homeless people than it does gay people. Right?
I mean, it's crazy. I was just there that summer.
Yeah, and
even Palo Alto has homeless people stretched up and down the railroad.
It's a tragedy, right? And so
devastating as a Danish person.
Totally.
It really messes with your mind.
Totally. And so I'm like, this obviously is broken. This shit does not work. But when I come here, I also think a little bit, there's a little lack of ambition.
Totally.
You know, I really appreciate, like when it works in America, it works great. That people really are ambitious. They really want to do something. But we have to find out a way to not, you know, leave homeless, thousands and thousands of people homeless.
I mean, I when I have to hire assistants, they have to set up companies to be consultants, and then they have to pay. I mean, they almost have to pay half their salary in order just to get started.
Right.
With like this one fee for just starting a company, and then there's a trash fee, even though they don't have any trash. You know, they work for me, and I paid my trash fee. And all these things, and it's just like it's pretty crazy.
What do we do? That's the thing I don't understand.
I don't know.
Like, how do we fix this? Because the American system does not work. We agree with that. Yeah. But it produces some pretty incredible levels of greatness as well.
It does, that's you're here and you're in a system that works, but you feel that it's breaking more and more.
Well, there is getting more and more square in the worst way.
But it's also but it's also the rules, like I don't know. It seems like a political cliche, but we need reforms. Somebody needs an eraser and take out the entire board.
Right,
and
start over.
Get some new stuff, because this is like build upon,
right.
and like trying to fix stuff through build-upons instead of
just tacking on things to this shed, which is just getting uglier and uglier because of all the stuff that's attached to it.
Exactly. And that was kind of, I guess, was the utopian anarchist dream of the financial collapse, that it would like destroy all society and we can build it up from scratch.
Boy, that didn't come true, huh?
Exactly. I mean, I guess that's the exact point, is that, whatever, real estate in Copenhagen is the same price as before, and in New York it's even worse. And like these bankers are just like sitting there collecting, and I don't know.
I'm not sure how much was fixed in terms of that. Although awareness has changed.
Yeah. Occupy.
Occupy did something. I heard they just bought, I don't know if it was hundreds of millions or tens of millions of dollars of debt from the banks, really cheap, and just forgave
the Occupy movement?
Yeah, they bought tons of debt, people's personal debt, either credit card debt or home debt, and just forgave it, just dissolved it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, which I was thinking like, okay, cool, because there's so much bad news about Occupy and the violence and,
Yeah, but also because it's not a registered trademark, so everybody...
Sure, and the media has an interest in not...
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other that's a whole other thing. But.
Yeah, but I don't know. I guess, to not talk about this for hours, I think, and to tie it into art, it's human nature, right? It's we're not pack animals. I don't think we're pack animals. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
We live in packs, huge packs. Mm-hmm. But when all push comes to shove, you protect your kid and yourself. Right. And these days, not even your spouse. But I think that's like emergency room. This French artist, Thierry Gourdjoffre, the Carnival.
Yeah. Okay.
There's this project going on, right? Like he's trying to he's trying to provoke this debate on like emergency. Like how do you rate emergencies, like right now we have Philippines, like whatever, 10 years ago there was the tsunami, or 8 years ago then there was the tsunami in Japan, and now there's the Philippines, and like next year we're going to have multiple, like or 5 years there's going to be like 3 typhoons or hurricanes at the same time. Like which one are you going to support? Like like can you rate emergency? And it boils down to like, when it's your own ass, like if you're in a building, how many of us can act like Mother Teresa? How many of us will save 10 other bankers from jumping from a collapsing tower?
Right.
Like what?
I think it's going to be very actual in a little bit. Also, it was interesting because I was in America for September 11th, and my boss was here in Denmark, obviously. You were in New York. Oh, good times.
Yeah.
But he was talking about how he didn't really realize what was happening until he got home and turned on the TV. And it's true. It made me think, because like I heard about the tsunami in Japan on the radio, and you actually hear about a disaster pretty much every other day of some sort. There's a landslide. There's a bus crash. There's stuff's happening kind of regularly.
Yeah.
And you don't really know how to rate it. You don't say like, it's not until you realize or see images that it strikes home, like, oh, we're talking about entire counties destroyed. We're talking about thousands of, hundreds of thousands of people, et cetera, et cetera.
And you still can't relate to it.
Right.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I have a family, 4 kids, and we're like, somebody put an image in my mind of a duck sitting on top of the water, and the legs just going...
Right, just
beneath it, but it's like sweet and just sitting there looking happy on top, right?
Right.
And that's that's us. We're just like
plowing away.
like every day from like after school till the kids go to bed, we're just like running around, driving around like crazy.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't remember being driven that much around, but
it's just stuff to do always.
Always. And
kids
so
don't
busy.
realize
And
it either.
but the point is that we're so busy that like dealing with a disaster, with an emergency in the Philippines it's difficult to relate to because we don't have 5 minutes to sit down and really think about it.
Right.
I mean, my half sister is Filipino, so we've donated all sorts of clothes and all this stuff. I mean, it's not so that's a bad example, but in general, I feel that like it's too far removed from me to relate to it, and if I look at my legs under the water, I'm stressed to the point of exhaustion.
Right.
And so where's
Right,
like which emergency
available?
Exactly, which emergency is like, how do you rate it? And I know when we had a near fatal accident with our youngest boy, that was pretty fucking intense, and it's still like what do you call it, post-traumatic stress syndrome within me, even though it's years ago. Some like little things trigger it, and that was definitely rated number 1, right? And I promise you, not because I'm evil or anything, but I mean, you save your own blood before you save 100,000
That's human
others.
nature. That makes
exactly, and that's
sense,
my point. It's like it's human nature, and it's human, and so I think human nature drives the bankers. I think it's like Star Wars.
I mean, I don't see how our brains could absorb the entire world in terms of.
But we're exposed to it. That's the
we
difference.
Watch it.
We're exposed. We're exposed to it,
right.
and the media, they try to make us feel guilty for not like sharing our welfare. Like, we have so much, give a little. Like this whole thing.
But Danes give a lot.
They do.
I've heard as terms of like GDP or whatever, the amount of donations that Danes give is a lot. But I think it's very abstract. They don't.
But I think we don't have to pay for our children's education. My friends that have become artists that have kids now. Are you crazy? They save every nickel, every dime. They put it in saving accounts. And that's what I'm saying. It's human nature.
Right. But let's tie it back to you then.
Yeah.
You mentioned that just like I think is very normal now. You have a lot going on in your life, and it's very stressful and everything to just keep your head above water. How do you find time to make work?
You become very organized. At least I did when I had started my family. And so I'm just extremely organized, and I know exactly, when I show up in studio, I know exactly, it's planned what I do, and I more or less, I know, I leave if I'm epoxying, I epoxy right before I go, so it dries overnight and so forth. And
do you find it's hard, kind of mentally, to have some freedom then?
No, because that's what they teach you at RISD. Work. It's just like, I don't know. I think it's like every other job. I talked a lot about it with like investment banker friends and stuff like that. And it's like, if they have some big acquisition merger thing, they don't pay their bills for those 3 months. They work. And I can't focus on other stuff than this, but I do, and I work. And if a bad day at the office, you don't, whatever, the paper, you have to rewrite the paper the next day. It's the same for me. If I'm inspired, things happen. Yay, great, and it's quick and it's fast and it's great. But I also feel that if I'm not inspired, and for lack of a better word, I have to keep on working, because if I just sit there and stare, definitely inspiration doesn't just like hit you out of nowhere.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what I'm noticing as more of an adult person now, or whatever you call it. You start dealing with different issues, a different set of issues as you get older, in terms of just staying afloat. Is that sometimes it's hard to let it all go, to be present and just say, okay, I'm here right now. I can play like when I was 22 again. Yeah. I can do,
Yeah, I mean,
that's a matter of training too. And
yeah,
focus.
well, I mean, that's one of the one side of the many coins, or one of the many sides of the coin. That's another. It feels like the coin gets more and more sides.
It's a many-sided coin, yeah.
Yeah, I can't sometimes feel that I spent the last 10 years trying to unforget or unlearn all the academics, all the rules, because that's what it is. It's just a set of rules to conduct business by, so other people can compare and contrast.
Totally.
But on the other hand, I also recognize the need for, a gallery for white walls to compare and contrast. And I think that's one of the things that Alan Kaprov and Yoko Ono, in the 50s, the lifelike artists, they freed up the institution so that we have a very clear picture of what the institution of the art world means and does. And as an artist, you can put your art inside it, and that's fine. And you can compare and contrast it at an art fair in Miami, or you can, show it in a gallery, or you can make street art, or spend your time working with school children. I don't find it as rigid. I don't think that an artist's career is tainted or painted one way or the other, because those people back then freed up, they.
Totally, and there's been a lot of there still is a lot of complaining about the commercial aspect of it, but you must admit that since the 60s and 70s, it's gotten a lot freer.
It has. I think, and again, it's human nature. Yoko Ono tried her whole working career to free the author from the artwork.
Right.
But, the human society demands the author. She can't do it. Like, all her shows are titled Yoko Ono now.
Right, and they're major
and like Alan
institutions.
Kaprov, when he died, there was, it was all his name.
Right.
Even though it was tires in a scrapyard or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Right.
and there was instructions and mind framing and whatever. It's like we need as a culture, as a society, we're dependent on authors, and it's fun to tour with and try and break down, but it's
a lot of work too.
Yeah, but and the art, it's not up to the artists.
Yeah,
because artists can only make their work and be content with that, and then pass it on, and then society can do what they want.
Control at some point.
You have to.
What I kind of want to rewind here a couple of steps. From what I understand, you didn't grow up making art then?
I grew up in the 80s, and I'm from 74. So
did you grow up here in Copenhagen?
Yeah, just north of.
Okay.
And pretty luckily, in a small town that had some of the first graffiti writers.
Where was that?
In Holte, it's called.
Yeah.
Holte and Vium, and they had some.
Kind of the near north.
Yeah, they had. There was a duo called the Terrific Two that started that whole thing out. Obviously a lot of people around Copenhagen at the same time. But for me, I got introduced to it. I remember my dad called me up one day. I was like, "Hey Thomas, check this out!" And then there's on Swedish TV, there was these kids in the Bronx doing electric boogie breakdance. I was just like, "Oh my fucking lord!" It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And so I was lots of other kids. I was into skateboarding, and I wasn't very good at graffiti, not at all.
But you enjoyed it and wanted to.
Yeah, but I didn't have any ambition. I didn't have any drive. I didn't have.
It was just something to do.
Yeah, I didn't have a friend of mine. He now is working in a very big corporation. He was also super working at getting up in the ranks, and it never really spoke to me. I really liked skateboarding, and I think it really helped me in the sense that it's just, whoever can make the highest ollie is better at doing ollies. It's pretty straightforward, and, that's it, And so, but what I did get into was doing the stenciling and the backs of denim jackets with my airbrush.
Ah, cool.
So I did a lot of airbrush painting and drawing, and then I grew up in a home filled with art, and so when I got to RISD, I actually had a much wider acceptance of what art could be than the teachers, and I actually was brought back to some kind of idea in my first year that abstract expressionism was like a true form of art, which was probably my misunderstanding of the guidance of the teachers. But I really enjoyed it, and I had a great teacher called Bryce Hobbs that really taught me how a two-dimensional surface can be activated in very simple terms. The rules of modern painting, of abstract painting, well, not even abstract painting, but modern painting from I guess just painting in general. He was awesome.
Do you consider yourself a painter?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I studied painting, I majored in painting, and I chose to make paintings because if you let society look at your artwork, art will always be used art historically in a critical way, and the square is the ultimate symbol of the Western society or our culture, human society. The box, the square, it doesn't exist in nature. Right. When you fly to New York or fly to the States, you come in over Newfoundland and you see no squares, and the first thing you see is like this pipeline, and it's just like a straight line, right? And then you see a field. It's a square field, right. And the closer you get to New York, the squarer it gets. And so obviously that's a very academic art school kind of thought, but that's what I was like. And at the time in mid 90s, late 90s, it was very installational, very video, very internet, all these new things. And so it's also like, hey, listen, it's as much an installation or a crazy performance or it's a valid decision to make a painting as it is to make some crazy new internet performance installment art machine.
I remember there was talk about painting being dead.
It happens, and that happens all the time.
Right, it's just like them saying hip hop was dead 3 years ago,
Yeah, exactly. And so I consider myself a painter, and actually the boards that are out there is like I kind of see them as surfboards shaped mixed with painting,
right?
Because they're square, right? And that's the link into painting.
You said you were a photographer before you went to school.
Worked. I don't think I really became a photographer. I worked as the third assistant to a commercial photographer.
Okay, so it wasn't a natural choice for you to make photo art.
No, I think it's too difficult. I think it's so difficult because I don't know. It's something that everybody can do, and you just have to be so good at it. Some are naturally good, some are technically talented, and it just so easily becomes contrived and bored. Right. But when you see a great photo, it's a great photo, and you can enjoy it. At least I can enjoy it, and I love it. But I think if I take a photo and I put it up on the wall, I just see mediocre crap.
Sure. Well, what happened when you got back? Did you immediately say, "Okay, I'm going to work towards being a professional artist"?
Well, that's what I did. I moved to New York, and I had a studio in Greenpoint. Shared it with some friends from school, and that's what we did. I just worked in studio. I think that was never really a way back. I never really tried not to. And I came back, and I was offered a residency through a Danish gallery called Aspik.
Yeah, Aspik.
In Mallorca. His parents.
Right? Yeah. Gallery,
and I came back from that, and this graffiti crew from New York, Fail, were installing their show at V1 Gallery, and I didn't know them, but we had friends in common in New York, and I was like, hey, I want to go hang out and say hi. And I went to school with Dan Colin, good friends with Ryan McGinley, and they were all hanging out in Iraq at that time. I was really good friends with Dash Snow. And so I wanted to go hang out with Patrick and Aiko, and I brought some of the sketches I'd been working on in Mallorca to show him, because it was this like sanding thing, and I was using a lot of stencil at that time, and I showed him, and obviously he was in V1, that was where his show was, And Jesper was there, and he was like, "Oh, Jesper liked it." He was like, "Hey, do you want to have a show?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that'd be cool." And
isn't that great how that works out sometimes?
yeah, totally. Because I had, and so I'm forever grateful for that.
Right.
Because and then I had 6 months later, I had my first art show, and it's just I don't know. When I had my first son, there was 1 year I didn't show, but I also had to rewire everything in my brain.
It's a pretty big reset button.
Yeah, totally.
So by listening to who you were hanging out with in New York, I imagine you guys were partying pretty hard and living the wild life,
Yeah.
I mean, Dash Snow partied himself.
Yeah, I mean,
pretty hard.
I left in 2002, and so it was pretty innocent there. I remember when they first had like smoked heroin, but also Ryan McGinley, he was like, "Hey Thomas, you don't need to do coke." One morning I was in a friend's bed at like 6 a.m, and they were all passed out,
right,
even though they were coked out, and I never needed it. I think that's one of the at least I thought back then. Now I have a teenage daughter. I think that's one of the
that'll change your idea about things.
But I had a pretty strong tolerance and very energetic, so I had no problem partying till 5, 6 a.m,
right,
which was common in Copenhagen, but
right,
definitely less so even in New York.
Well, that's the thing about partying. It's fine until it's not.
Exactly.
There's very little gray area.
Yeah. I tried intervening with Dan Colin over the internet from Copenhagen, but it's kind of difficult. But then Ryan McGinley set it up and got him out of it, and which is awesome.
That is good.
Yeah.
We like happy endings.
Except for the people that didn't make it.
Right.
I don't know. I was also out of the loop because I wasn't a user or abuser, and so it's kind of like nobody that does drugs kind of really want people that don't do drugs.
It's a little awkward
around, and but it's also that whole thing that like you're free to do drugs and you can live your own life, and it's like people that do drugs are pretty crappy, kind of like to each other. It's kind of like, hey, you have a right to overdose, kind of like sad. I don't know it, but anyway, it went overboard.
Yeah.
But way after I was there. So luckily I wasn't part of that.
What about when you came back? I mean, you worked as an artist in New York, which is probably notoriously one of the hardest places to survive and work as an artist. And then you came to Denmark, which is equally hard, but there's just a whole different setup, really.
Yeah, it's weird.
I mean, what do you prefer?
Well, it's sort of like it was like I don't know. It was chance, really. My work permit was expiring. I got a job. I needed to get a job, and I had that extension of my school, I-20, and then I got a job with some crappy magazine. But then some drug dealer was shot in the head in front of my studio, and I was like, oh, that was
New York.
Yeah, that was not nice, right? And then my sister in Copenhagen had a kid, and they moved out of their apartment, and I could. They had this clause in their lease that they could pass on the lease.
Right.
So they passed it on to me, and I was like, lots of trouble in New York. No trouble in Copenhagen, and I don't know. It was expensive living in New York, right?
It frees out. I mean, being here, the thing that I've really enjoyed. I moved here to see how it would go.
Yeah.
I came here as a test, and the thing I almost immediately noticed is I have a lot more time and energy to focus on making work.
Exactly.
I don't have to worry about so many things I had to worry about at home. Just to clear the piles of shit out of the way in order to get to actual working took so much more effort there.
Yeah. And I think it only gets worse.
Right.
Because, when you're young adult, you have no worries, right?
Right.
You need to worry about food and rent,
right,
pretty much.
Right. And beer.
And exactly. But then comes children, then comes school, then comes I mean, it's crazy.
Right. I mean, imagine having 4 children and living in New York and not being, a big selling artist.
It's impossible.
You certainly have to make a lot of sacrifices. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you have to live very far from what I consider New York.
Right. Well, that's the new reality too. Everything's gotten priced.
Yeah,
I mean, it was expensive then, but now.
Even Todd James, the artist that shows here.
Yeah.
He still lives in the building where he grew up, which is or was affiliated with public school 234, I think it's called in Tribeca, right? Which is like the only public school in New York that's worth anything, and they just like made this political slice because there's too many families that live down there, so he can't have his kids in the school. So he I don't know, he was pretty upset.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal. I mean, New York, San Francisco is also insane. I heard that the average rent now is over $3,000 a month.
Yeah, and they have the white buses now.
Yeah.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah,
and they get to use the public bus stops, but the public can't get on these pretty buses. They have to go on the crappy buses.
Yeah.
That's pretty. I read this. Andrew Schultz, another colleague that also shows here from San Francisco, he posted this.
It's pretty brutal.
Yeah,
it's pretty ugly. I was there this last summer, and I'm not even that old, and I never actually lived in San Francisco proper, but it has changed a lot. Even the fact when I moved to Denmark, almost all my friends lived in San Francisco. Now I know one person in San Francisco.
Yeah,
everyone else moved to Oakland. They moved to Los Angeles. They had to leave. It was just like I was saying earlier, those piles of shit to get out of the way. What's that?
Oakland isn't bad, I think. It's not San Francisco. Portland, Oregon is also a pretty cool city.
Yeah, but it's up and coming. It's probably going to be way too expensive in about 5 years.
Yeah. I remember I had a friend that moved to Portland, Oregon.
Austin, Texas is coming up heavy. It has been for a while. But yeah, Oakland's cool, but now it's becoming really expensive. My sister lives there, and it's just going up and up.
Yeah.
But okay, but we're here, so that's great.
Yeah, that's a tie-in to Paper Money. But anyway, I think that when I came to Copenhagen in 2002 from New York, I was astounded. I was like, holy shit, there was so much fun stuff going on, and people were doing crazy shit. Jesper would be DJing, and like all these places were just opening up, and there was a really huge mentality of
there was
inclusion.
Kind of a renaissance here, wasn't there?
I think so.
Things really, I've heard about this. That V1 opened in the middle of this flowering.
Yeah, it was crazy of like graffiti, of dance, of all this cultural just like burst of energy, and it was amazing.
Great timing.
Yeah, and I guess you can tie it into some financial issues, but it was amazing. I was just like, I was blown away. I had such a great time.
And you felt at home.
Yeah, totally. And what I realized was that after 9/11, most people forget that there was the internet crash in 97. So the economy in New York sucked even before 9/11. But after 9/11, nothing was going on. And it was only the people that had their personal networks, like Dan Colin, like Ryan McGinley, who grew up in New Jersey but hung out in Manhattan all their childhood, that had their extensive networks in New York that were
closed.
Yeah, that were going anywhere, that were doing stuff, and that got into, I was there, right, but not part of it, like.
Right, and then across the ocean over here, things were just blowing up.
Yeah, I didn't even know it. And it was just by chance, these things happened to me. And I was like, fuck it, Like, I had never considered leaving New York. And then all of a sudden, I was like, fuck it, I'm going home, And that's the joy of being young, I guess. You don't, fuck it,
Right. Well, that's what I moved here for. I said, fuck it, and now I'm, now I'm over 30, and I'm like, oh man, I got to think carefully about everything. I got to weigh my options.
And anyway, so like Paul Auster, I just read a quote of him, an interview actually from a few years back, but he says I'm a realist in the fullest sense of the word. I try to write as absurdly as life is,
which is pretty absurd.
It's absurd, and the amount of coincidences and chance happenings that happen all the time.
right.
is insane, and you can't reimagine it.
Right.
Like, and so that ties into my work because I rely heavily on chance. It's chance abstraction, but so much that I feel like I'm a realist. I make real objects. I make individual pieces that actually exist on their own. They're not representative. They don't try to be something they're not. So I actually consider it realism.
Yeah, let's talk about your show because you just hung it yesterday.
Yeah,
the show opens on Friday.
It's called Grazing Blitz, which is ties back to that duck. The duck that's like all like happy looking, all completely still. It's like initially comes from our mental hideout. My wife and I, we meditate on being grazing cows, like just like
right, head down, thinking,
yeah, just being
silent.
still, yeah. And then there's the blitz aspect of it, is the process. I kind of like apply my process to everything I come across, more or less. Not as much in this show, but there's a bunch of smaller pieces too that have just been painted and sanded, and then it's just like
right. It's
blitz.
very laborious. I can see that you're really working with these objects.
Yeah.
And they're made out of fiberglass, right? Surfboard material?
Actually, not fiberglass. I used to use fiberglass, but then chance had it that Copenhagen got flooded, and my supplier was in a basement, and it
Was this the big flood a couple of years ago?
Yeah, and it all got destroyed, and then I don't know. As I was researching on the internet, I discovered that actual do-it-yourself surfboard makers, they just use their old sheets and linen because it's much thinner and much lighter, and they don't have anybody nagging them for quality control. They don't. It doesn't really need not to break. It just needs to. I guess it's not all of them, but you can.
Hold on a second. What do you do with bed sheets?
You use them instead of fiberglass.
You melt them?
No. You
just layers upon layers upon
layers. You just
put
just one sheet of linen and epoxy.
Okay. That makes sense. That's an interesting element too.
Exactly, and the fun thing is that my mom, for some reason, saved everything, right? And so she still had the linen from the 70s that my parents had when they lived in San Francisco. So I started using these old family bed sheets and got these like weird floral pictorial
nice
images
faded
below the paint that would come through. And I don't know, it just worked out really well. I think it added a different layer, another aspect to it all.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest aha moment came when I, at my last show here in 11, tried to order some blanks from a surfboard company, which is a board without graphics or anything, just straight up. And I wanted it square. I just wanted it, the shape that I want. And I was like, no, we can't make it square. I'm like, why not? Well, because the fiberglass or the fabric can't do the corner because it bulges up.
Right.
And that ties into mine having to be square because they're paintings and they're initially about criticizing our own culture. And then the whole myth of Sisyphus, that it's a project that will never work. Like it's impossible to make a perfect specimen of my work because it will break, and then I fix it and it breaks, and I fix it, and that's sort of the process. It breaks and I fix it. It's kind of like Sisyphus rolling the rock, and it starts over.
That one, right? Okay.
He rolls the rock up the hill, and it goes back down, and he just has to do it for eternity. And I think if we, as people,
that's a bleak look at making art.
Well, no, because I think that the bleak look is that if you look at success as the goal, if you look at the object as final, the painting, the art
the top of the hill
as the goal, but it's a process. It's something that I don't know. It's another issue with Denmark, right? We're not very laborious, and if we don't get paid enough. We would rather just sit in our couch, right? Which is again a societal issue. But if we spend some time and work on clearing the horizon, the horizon is much better. It's
Totally.
Yeah, it's a Hitchcock. He says, "Clear horizons. I need clear horizons." There's some old interview of him, but he's like, you need to make sure your studio is clean when you start out.
Right.
Just say like, if you have all this shit coming up all the time, then it's difficult to get something rolling.
Right. Even cleaning your apartment can make your life 100% better.
Exactly. No, and then moving the mountain just stone by stone. It's like that thing. Just keep going. Right. And whatever happens is great. But
what's the element of critique you're talking about in the work of society?
Well, I mean, essentially, I'm breaking art. I'm sanding it down. I'm fucking it up. I'm trashing art. And art, I guess, is the prime example of Western culture, right? That's the finest of the fine art. It's a culturally, yeah. It's like, I mean, I think it's still. I mean, I think for artists and me as an artist, it's not. I mean, it's something that my exhibition is movable. You're supposed to go in and move it around and look at stuff and turn them around.
And touch them and
and it's such a simple thing, but it's very difficult for people to engage in that activity. It's just like culturally, you're schooled to not
supposed to touch artwork.
And this is so sensible. It's even like I don't know. It's sanded to 11,000 grit, and it feels so soft to touch. And they're light, and most people, they remind them of ceramic glazing, so they anticipate it being very heavy.
Right.
But it's super light, and it's fun to touch, and you move it around, and it's such a small gesture, but with such big implications. And that's also, I guess, and within that, there's a critique. I mean, I think. As I was saying earlier, it's not necessary. I don't really have to critique society because society uses art to critique itself. Like if you look, when art history looks at art, you critique. They look at society like 100 years ago, 500 years ago, and look, are there any like critical points? So I think what I can do best as an artist is be honest with me and my situation and my position in the world and make my art. And then 500 years, when people look at 2000-ish Copenhagen art, they'll compare and contrast and figure out what I meant or what Right. I don't know. That's what you learn at RISD. You get a big perspective on things. Like my painting technique teacher, whatever. Andrew Raftery, he makes all his paintings. He does portraits and stuff like that, and he paints. He stretches the canvas 90-degree angular, so in 500 years, when they have to be restored, it's easier for the restoration.
Oh man, as a framer, I'm really happy to hear that.
To lift them off the frame, right? And he puts a copper plaque on the back where he etches in the pigments that he's used, so they can.
Wow.
Yeah, but I like it, and I think that's like respectful of the craft and history, and of the people that pays him for the portraits is to the historicization of it all.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And as a framer, I'm shocked sometimes at the lack of respect artists have for art buyers and the price that they ask for it. They make artwork on materials which will not last. And I understand that as being an important part of certain types of art. But if it's just because you're too lazy or whatever to do it on proper materials, you could be selling something for many thousands of euros or whatever, which is going to disappear in 10 years.
I know. And it's and obviously the abstract expressionists that started using acrylic paint in the 50s and 60s or whenever it was invented they used house paint, a lot of them, and it disappeared within 5-10 years.
Totally.
But that was different because they were explorers in a sense, right?
Right, they didn't know what
they
were
really
using.
didn't know. But that's the point of my technical painting instructor, that he was like, we at least know that if an oil painting is painted correctly, it will last for 500 years, because we have paintings that are 500 years old and they are starting to deteriorate.
Right.
But if it's painted right, it can be salvaged.
Right. Which is where the original high prices of art comes from, in a way.
Exactly.
That you say, okay, this can be passed down in my family, or this can be,
Exactly.
this can be just as good in 80 years as it is now.
And royal portraits are meant to last forever.
Totally.
And the other year there was an Elizabeth Payton painting that went for as much as, and then there was a Renaissance painting the same size, and hers went for $300,000, and this Renaissance painting went for like $50,000 or something like that. And there was a completely skewed in that, because it was like, I don't know, it was just I don't know, it just showed the art world,
right.
the institution of the Lemming effect.
Totally.
That's a pack.
That's a big deal.
At that point, we act
too.
as pack animals.
But back to your show, are you satisfied? I mean, are you sitting
I'm
here
super happy.
at it?
I'm super happy. It's at least if I focus on a few days ago, I think
yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
There's a certain, I have a certain, I allude a little bit to Andy Warhol, not as much anymore, but coming from RISD and New York, obviously you can't escape Andy Warhol, and I have a certain factory, laborious factory thing in my process, and I used to apply the exact same paint to all individual pieces in a show, and then they would end up obviously being a little bit different because it's all handmade.
But same materials.
And so eventually, if you have a show of 20 pieces, at some point, you can't, there's no more time to paint on all of them. And then that's the point of no return. And at the point of no return, for me, I'm like, fuck, I hate this show.
I really wanted to do something else.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, now I just have to finish it. And then most of the time, as I'm finished, as I'm sanding, as I'm polishing, all these, crazy little abstractions that just remind you of how great life is, start appearing, and, and the fruit of the labor just makes you happy. It's like, I don't know, mowing the lawn, these things, that are just like, you can actually see.
Right, I produced this, I made this.
Exactly, it's very simple, it's very basic. It's like, I built this from scratch and now it's there, and that makes me really happy.
That's a really underappreciated thing in our world today.
Yeah.
Before I started making frames, I worked in stores and shops or restaurants. Yeah. And as soon as I started making frames, I immediately realized, oh, this is great, because every day I can look at a physical thing I made.
For me, I come from a long line of carpenters, and I think it's just, I don't know.
You just feel it, that you like making things with your hands.
Yeah, and that brings me back to the honesty thing, is that I've always, since I was a kid, wanted to build my own surfboard, and really it's like a childhood dream that's making me happy. And if you tie that in with some sense of aura belonging to an artwork, it's like these artworks are made out of in like happiness and enjoyment and thrill and love, and if that can communicate as the artwork's aura, it definitely will. Like you will walk in and look at it as like somebody really spent a lot of, like there's labor of love in this,
right?
And I think that's pretty simple and basic, but I think it works.
Is that what you hope to express too? The feeling for the viewer that you love these works.
Yeah. I guess I try to guide the spectators as little as possible.
Now that you've finished your show and it's hanging on the wall in 3 days, or I guess in 2 days actually, there is opening. People are going to come. They're going to look at it, and you'll drink a few drinks. You'll shake a lot of hands. The dust will settle at some point. and then you're going to go back to your studio and it's going to be more or less empty to some degree or another.
Yeah, I just cleaned it completely today and yesterday.
Is that a good feeling or a bad feeling?
It's a super feeling. I'm already working on my next show.
So you've got the next step.
Yeah.
You're already going.
Yeah.
That's great. Is it going to be different, do you think? Or are you like expounding on this? Or is
it's going to be... I've made a few smaller sculptures using different materials that have done pretty well, surprisingly done pretty well, but opened a door into a realm of other materials that I shut down pretty much. I think maybe pretty risky, focus and
do this now.
Yeah,
and then do something else later.
And so I have a lot of work with different materials coming out, but it hasn't tied itself together yet. I actually thought this show was going to be all these other sculptures that I'm working on, or wall hung pieces, and my next show, which is in September in New York, is not going to be...
Oh, shit, you got a date and everything.
Yeah. I'm a artist in residence at Gammelholdegård Art Museum, doing a school project all spring, and then at the same time working on this show that is probably going to be like a maze-like kind of thing. I can't start to get into it. I'm not even close to having figured out, but I've started the 2 first prototype sculptures.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I was just curious about whether, because I know for some people when it's done, they're deflated and they just need to stop for 3 months. My sister is a research scientist, and she talks about it being... We call it dopamine drop, but it's not really dopamine. It's like, I think it's serotonin. It's like when you're stressed and you have this high level, your body gets used to this high level of serotonin or action,
whatever.
Stress, move,
it's what's this called?
The thyroid? Or the Adam's apple.
Yeah. But the thyroid produces this hormone. And the minute you hang your show, like you stop producing, but you've gotten, it's like a cold turkey on a natural cold turkey.
Right.
But I'm showing next week in Miami, and one of the sculptures broke in transit, so I'm already stressed at the next show.
Right, so you just keep that
I have to go work on the beach. It's going to be plein air sculptures. It's a tiny thing. I can fix it, no problem. But
is that for Art Basel, Miami?
Yeah, I'm a show with a gallery in New York called Klaus und Sagen, and they're part of NADA.
I think it's also great that I noticed that you, during the Chart Art Fair this summer, were one of the choices V1 made for showing kind of at a different level of institutional art fair, whatever the hell you want to call it. I mean, I thought that was great, that they chose to put your work forward.
I was really happy with that too. I was the only Danish artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much in the whole show. Exactly. No, I wasn't, but there's another. I liked it. I mean, I think that showing at Charlottenborg is amazing. Tall ceilings, the floors, you can feel that it's a sturdy building.
It's a good space.
Unlike a regular art fair.
Right. All right, well, thank you for coming.
No, you're welcome. I have to run, actually. I have to go take kids to swimming
good
lessons.
Time. All right.
Swimming lessons.
Well, good luck on Friday. Good luck for the opening. And,
thank you. Are you stopping by?
I am going to come by.
Awesome.
I think
I'll buy you a beer.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, that was Thomas, my art school compatriot, American art schools. Woo! Cool stuff, huh? He's a nice guy, and he's got a lot to talk about, so come ask him. Come ask him on Friday at the show. Should we say it again? V1 Gallery, Friday the 29th. No, let's not say it again. You guys know. Holler. Find him. So yeah, we just want to say thank you guys for listening, and thanks for joining us. Check out our web space, undergang.net. We just wrote a review of the show right now at Nikolai Kunsthal here in Copenhagen in the old church, if you can call it a review. We blathered on about Nikolai Kunsthal, the shows that are up hanging on the walls there. And funny that I say hanging on the walls, because one of them there is no art hanging on the walls. But yeah, go check that review out. Go check out the show. It's definitely worth it. Some of it is really funny, and God knows we need more hilarity in our life. So go down to Nikolai Kunsthal. It costs almost nothing to get in there. It's in an old church, and it's interesting art. It does not get much better than that. So yeah, you can find everything at undergang.net. We have the podcast. We have a site where we discuss music, and we will expand onto talking about books and film and anything else of interest. We also have a family photo album. Come peep the family. Please write a comment, send us an email, holler@undergang.net, write a review on iTunes, subscribe on iTunes, all of that sort of good stuff, or yell at us on Twitter, the internet version of the schoolyard. We are at the Undergang, and let's keep the talk going. This episode was recorded by Undergang Unlimited, forever and always. The intro music and outro music is provided by Heavy Links. Check it out. It's thundering. There's a link on our site. And the interstitial music, once again, is provided by The Insider. Check him out. There's also a link. That's good music. We don't really know who he is, but we found him under a Creative Commons license. And almost everything he does is good. So peep The Insider. See what's going on with that guy. It's good music. Holler. See you at V1 on Friday. Thanks, guys.